Everyone, this is Pat Rigsby, and Pat, like I said before, honored to be on the phone with you here. I've been following your stuff for a long time, and really excited to pick your brain about self-care, and for you, pick your brain about self-care for dads. I'm really excited how we're going to throw that into this. It's gonna be great. So, anyways, Pat, why don't you take just a couple minutes, kind of introduce us to who you are, what you got going on, and we'll kind of go from there.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. Really excited to be part of this. And yeah, you know, I think I would probably self-identify as a dad, a husband, entrepreneur, business coach, author, a lot of different hats. And I think a lot of guys kind of feel the same way. So, I've built about 30 businesses,
Wow.
primarily in fitness and health sports performance industry, everything from franchises to business coaching organizations, to equipment companies and certification bodies. I've owned a couple physical facility gyms. Prior to all that, I was a college baseball coach, a college strength and conditioning coach. But these days, for the most part, I do business coaching with fitness and health entrepreneurs and hang out with my family a lot. So, yeah, that's it.
Cool. I mean, yeah, one of the big things that I've got from you, why I wanted to pick your brain, is that everything I see from you is about almost like doing well and doing good, where it seems like you've really got this focus on helping people, but then also making sure that you take care of yourself and that you spend time with your family. That seems to be one of the biggest things I notice you pushing out there. Is that kind of, would you say that's true, or that kind of I'm in the ballpark with that?
Yeah, I think that, there's this misconception with some of the stuff that's out there when everybody talks about hustle and grind and everything else, that professional success and kind of personal happiness are mutually exclusive things, right?
Hmm.
And that you have to kind of concede a lot of the the things that might be important to you as a father, as a spouse, as a friend, taking care of yourself in this quest to build successful businesses. And well, there is a hint of that in truth, that we're not always going to have things exactly in balance, um, especially like at an early stage, at a startup phase in a business. That shouldn't be the entire journey, right? Like, we shouldn't be behaving like a startup 5 years into being a business owner. And then, um, I think one of the things that I've always wanted to caution myself against was having this full bank account and a pretty empty life.
Yeah,
Uh,
awesome.
so, I think I've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that, I built a business for myself that allowed me to spend time with my kids as they've grown up, spend time with my wife, spend time with the other people in my life that I care about, try to take care of myself to a decent degree, both physically, but I mean mentally as well. And uh, I think that a lot of the stuff that I do from a business coaching standpoint really plays into that. I try to help other people who want to do the same thing kind of create a path to do that for themselves. And um, I would love to tell you that this all kind of just came to me out of the gate, but it certainly didn't. I mean, I know that when I was really building, and at one point I was the CEO of an organization, owned kind of this holding company that had over a dozen different businesses simultaneously, like under a roof. And and I could just feel that, what, I'm not spending as much time with my family. I'm kind of disconnected. So even when I'm there, I'm not there.
Mhm.
And it just kind of hit me one day, and I'm saying, when my, at the time, 3-year old turns 4, I don't get 3 back. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still his dad,
Uh-huh.
whatever else, but I don't get a do over. And at that point, I kind of just made the decision to, um, craft out a different plan and go down that road. It's been easily the best, the last probably 3.5, 4 years since I've been down that road has exceeded anything that I had ever done in the 20 years of professional life prior.
Mm-hmm. I mean, what you just said was sage around, not wanting to have a full bank account and an empty life. How'd you come to that realization? That's not something you hear. I don't hear too many trainers and business coaches saying that. It's kind of I hear a lot of the opposite of like, like you said, you got to grind, you got to make money, you got to hustle, you got to have impact. And it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, is that going to get you to happiness and feeling good? So how did you get to that realization that it's not about the full bank account?
So, so first of all, there were a couple of things that played into it. Number one was, I had my dad owned a small business and he kind of let it consume him. And I don't necessarily know that in hindsight, he would have done the exact same thing. So that was probably a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spent some time talking to somebody who owned a hospice style company. He said, you know what, out of all the people we've ever been in with, taking care of them while they're in hospice, none of them ever said, I wish I'd have worked more. And, I thought that was a pretty important one. And then finally, I grew up in a town that was kind of an economically depressed town. My first career was as a college baseball coach, and I didn't make a whole lot of money then. Small college athletics isn't necessarily the most financially rewarding thing. And, so I looked up maybe 10 years into my entrepreneurial career, and I'm like, man, I've made more money in a year than I ever imagined making. My net worth was way better than I could have ever exceeded. It's like, so if this doubles or triples, how does this improve my life beyond where it is now? I mean, my vacations get a little bit better. My car gets a little fancier or something like that. I mean, I've got a 17-year-old and an 8-year-old, and man, 8 turns into 17 in the blink of an eye.
Mm.
And it's like, nah, I mean, I'm not going to get those moments back. I'm not going to get, the opportunity to kind of spend time with my parents back. And I live 3 hours away from them. So, I'm not guaranteed hundreds of future visits. So probably need to enjoy those moments maybe a little bit more than I had, always kind of in hustle mode to see what I could do. And then maybe the last thing that I would allude to along these lines is like, you know what, the to-do list never gets shorter. So if that's the quest, it's never going to happen. So, instead I really focused on like, what are the top 3 things I need to get done today? And then being at peace with saying like, that's the finish line for today.
Mm-hmm.
And if I accrue enough 2 or 3 important things done days, then my business is going to grow, and I'm not going to have to feel like I'm like selling my soul to make it happen.
Yeah. Really moving from being busy to productive. That's what it sounds like. Awesome. That's so great to hear. How'd you get into wellness? What was the catalyst for that? And especially as a career?
So like I said, I was a college strength coach, college baseball coach, definitely baseball more than the strength stuff. I mean, I kind of almost was the inventor of that position at the university. And really, those were the things that I was interested in. I found myself always gravitating to that, the strength and conditioning, the fitness performance stuff, first to make myself a better baseball player. And then over time, it's just, you find yourself, if you're going to study in your free time, if you're going to read books, and I was always a reader, like, what am I reading? Like, what am I choosing to show an interest in? And so when I left the university setting, I knew I wanted to own a business. I'm like, well, I need to build a business around things that I actually enjoy, because otherwise I'm just going to kind of create a success that kind of sucks,
Yeah.
right? And um, so that seemed like the logical next step for me, not necessarily knowing what I was getting into, just knowing that I was excited about that stuff, thought I liked it well enough to learn to be good at
Yeah. Pretty cool. I mean, do you ever think you were going to end up living in your passion and working and making good money there all at the same time?
it. I definitely never thought that it would turn into what it's turned into. I mean, at one point, my franchise organization that I founded, we had about 275 locations between national and international. I've written a number of books at this point, everything. I would have never guessed any of that would have ever happened. I thought, I'm going to have one location and I'm going
Hmm.
to be a small business owner. And, that's what I knew. I mean, my dad owned an auto repair center, and I kind of knew that. And I knew other people who were small business owners. And that's kind of what I expected it would be. And it's like, well, I can kind of build a better mousetrap and learn from those guys and maybe do it a little bit more efficiently. But I certainly didn't think it was going to turn into what it's become.
Yeah. So cool. Is, dive in.
Yeah, it's been it's been a lot of fun, and it's been kind of reassuring to me uh, that I mean, the stuff that we may hear at different stages of life or whatever else, like, hey, you can kind of do what you want to do and be what you want to be, and you can make. I mean, I had a professor, and frankly, this probably is going to sound bad because I didn't. I mean, it's going to make me sound like I'm like was the most awful student ever, but I only really remember one meaningful thing a professor said to me, and the entire time I was in undergrad, grad school, I had a professor who said, "Look, you can become wealthy doing about anything as long as you're willing to be better than everybody else at doing
Hmm.
it."
Yeah, totally.
Um, and so it's nice to think that, yeah, I mean, you don't have to choose some profession that you dislike, that you kind of tolerate, to do what you want to do. And one of the things that I know has been a driving force for me is not that I want my boys to grow up and do exactly what I do, but for them to kind of see me as an example of, yeah, I mean, you can have some professional success and not feel like you're compromising all this other stuff in the process.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can hear by the way you're talking and that the words you use, that everything around you is around choice and really deciding how your life's going to look and how you're going to show up. How does self-care play into that for you, Pat? I mean, how does that show up? Because I know as a business owner myself, it's like, do I want to take care of myself today or do I want to go make something for the business? And sometimes, I mean, that's a choice that's got to be made. So how do you balance that and take care of yourself with everything you've got going on?
I mean, I'll be the first to tell you, working in the fitness industry, it's kind of this humbling thing where, yeah, I mean, I take care of myself pretty well compared to maybe the average small business owner, but I'm around like the fittest people ever. So, I was like, yeah, I'm not necessarily always kind of keeping up with their standards, but I think a lot of it is just thinking of, okay, how do I um, do the things that I want to do? Well, number one, I need to kind of be functioning at a higher level than I would be if I didn't take care of myself. I need to um, kind of be sharp. I need to have some endurance to move from this thing to this thing to this thing throughout the course of the day, and then still be able to be on when the kids get home from school and I'm doing things there. So, I tend to start the day with some sort of activity. I mean, I don't know that it's always, the this high level workout or whatever else, but there's always 25 or 30 minutes dedicated to strength training, some mobility stuff, and some sort of additional movement, whether that's doing some incline walking on a treadmill, uh, sometimes outdoors walking around the neighborhood, or today there were just a lot of farmers walks kind of mixed into stuff. So that's kind of a kickstart to the day, and that allows me to feel maybe like I've checked off one of those important things. So it's also kind of this little momentum booster.
Yeah, totally.
And by the end of that, I'm kind of clear headed for some of the stuff that I'm doing in the morning, which is usually when I'm doing, things like writing, the strategy stuff. And then I transition to, more of like coaching calls and things like that in the afternoon. One of the things I kind of do to maybe double up or multitask is I do a lot of my coaching calls walking on the treadmill or walking around the neighborhood. Not, and obviously, I've got to be very attentive to the client that I'm working with. So, I'm walking on the treadmill at kind of a pretty slow pace, so they're not hearing the treadmill in the background or whatever. But that way I'm getting some activity in. I'm upright. I'm not just sitting in the chair all day. And somewhere along the day, and I'll be the first to tell you that I'm not necessarily the strength training and movement stuff, the kind of walking around stuff is very, very consistent as far as when that happens. Throughout the rest of the day, there are a couple things that I do that are maybe a little bit more fluid, kind of where the day takes me. One of two things will happen. I'll either do some breathing, like diaphragmatic breathing, resets type stuff that really helped me alleviate some of the nagging pain I had over the years. A gentleman by the name of Bill Hartman, who I think is, like the best corrective exercise, physical therapy guy on the planet. Bill, some of the stuff he had me doing literally, I would say, changed my life. Just made a lot of the stuff that I would do going out, and I probably make well over 1,000 throws of a baseball or football or something with my younger son every week. And I do it entirely pain-free after 2 decades of shoulder pain. It was kind of like, I'd still go throw, play catch with my kids, that sort of thing, but I would do it knowing that it was going to lead to uncomfortable sleep and some pain the next day. But it was just like, okay, it's just the price I'll pay. But now, no pain, anything at all. So I'll do that, or I'll do, I'll just use like the Headspace app and do some meditation. And it's kind of inconsistent. Sometimes it'll be in the evening to kind of wind down. Sometimes it'll be at the end of the coaching call stuff, just as kind of a way to reset before the evening. So maybe not as structured as some people are, but it's just one of those things that I always check the box every day. And then really the other thing that I do is I just play a lot. I have a very active 8-year-old who is very much into baseball, so it's kind of convenient for me. But he's also, he likes soccer, he likes football, he likes basketball. So I would say 6 days a week we're doing some sort of physical activity. The 17-year-old jumps in and we play some basketball collectively. So there's that. And
that reminds me of wars we used to have in the backyard between me, my brother, and my dad.
It's
you don't want to miss that stuff, like you were saying.
I'm getting beat up at this stage of life with that sort of stuff. But so there's a lot of that, um, and and I've definitely become more attentive to trying to do different things for quality of sleep as I've gotten older. It's not something I take for granted anymore. Um, but all that stuff, it's like, you know what, you want to be maybe a higher performing version of you throughout the day, because I want anything that I'm doing, if I'm taking the time to be with a coaching client,
Mm-hmm.
um, I want to be there for them. I want to be functioning at a high level, not drained, not dragged down in the middle of the afternoon where, a lot of us hit a slump.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I want to be creative in the morning and sharp. I want to be active. I don't ever, and knock on wood, I mean, I can count the number of times I've said no to um, my kids about going out and playing on one hand in the entire time they've been alive. And
Wow.
uh, and you want to be able to do that, but I think that kind of feeds business success, and if you do business the right way, it kind of feeds the opportunity to do those things.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing is it sounds like it's a priority for you, where I'm not even hearing you say it has to be one thing. It doesn't have to be a certain type of movement or a certain type of breathing. It's just like, this you're putting yourself first, it sounds like in the morning, making it a priority to take care of yourself. And then that bleeds out into the day where I think a lot of us get too hung up on it has to look like this, has to be a certain amount of time. So I mean that's what I'm hearing from you is that it's a priority and something that you make on your, that checklist of this has to be done.
Yeah, and I think the fortune of the seat that I sit in, right, is I get to work with these guys who are literally the best in the world at, fitness, physical therapy, nutrition. I mean, I was on the phone, or actually on a video conference with Dr. Mike Roussel, one of the top nutrition experts in the world. I mean, he's the nutrition expert for Men's Health magazine. We
Yeah.
were on for an hour this morning. And so if I have a question, I can go to these guys. But then also from an observational standpoint, they all do different things themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So to think there's only one right way to do stuff, um, not necessarily true. So, I'm pretty much in line with what my goals are, and it's to be healthy and active. And I want to be able to go play basketball with my kids. I want to be able to play catch. I want to be able, I mean, we took an enjoyable hike that lasted for, I don't know, probably 4 hours on Sunday. And I want to be able to do that sort of stuff and be able to go at a pretty brisk pace and still be upright the next day and not be struggling. And, it also kind of helps that, I mean, my wife is in infinitely better shape than I am, and she's worked in the fitness industry for, well, I mean, yesterday was the 11th anniversary of her online fitness business. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, I try to keep up, but I mean, she's certainly the leader of the pack with that stuff in our household too.
And how old are you, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
46.
What's that?
46.
Yeah, and moving like a 30-year-old sounds like, or even even better than a lot of 30-year-olds.
Well, I'm trying, and there was certainly a point there, maybe in my late 30s, especially, where I felt like maybe I was moving like somebody 10, 15, 20 years older. But now, yeah, I certainly feel like there's a lot of years that have been kind of hopefully shaved off as far as the mobility, the activity. And I think also you get to a stage of life where um, you know how you look on the beach may not be as important as how you hold up chasing around 8-year-olds and playing basketball with 17-year-olds, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, more about how you feel.
Yeah.
Awesome. Why don't we transition into you talking about how busy dads can stay at peak performance? I mean, that's really what we've been talking about. But if there's a specific system or approach that you've got for the busy dads that are going to be watching to say, hey, follow this program or follow this system, and they can be like mid 40s and feeling better than they did in their mid 30s. I know as a guy in his mid 30s, it's like, I'm looking at people like you and older teachers like, wow, that's a possibility. We don't have to look like our grandparents at 50 or 60. Like there's a different world that we have access to. So there's a system or a method you've got that I think that we'd love to hear what that is.
Yeah. So I mean, as simple as it sounds, I try to strength train. I end up probably strength training 6 days a week, but I probably would say three to 4 days a week. And if it's 20 minutes, that's fine. And at this point, I just alternate upper body, lower body stuff because it's easier for me to do that. Simply, if I travel, if we're on vacation, whatever else, it's easier to manage that in transition than doing some of the other arrangements, be it full body stuff or different ways that people arrange their workouts. It's easy to keep a nice rhythm with that. The second thing is make activity a priority. I am as simple as it gets with that sort of stuff. I mean, I use an Apple Watch and track activity on that, and I've got kind of two baselines. One, if I know I'm kind of committed to being in a room, kind of sitting down with clients for a day, and then what I want on my regular days.
Mm-hmm.
And so those two things, and then making sure you're just kind of taking care of some of the things we don't think about, like the non-traditional exercise. I mean, committing to sleeping well, committing to doing things that reduce stress, be it the breathing exercises, or for me, like those resets too, or doing something like headspace, but really kind of minimizing stress to the best of your ability, and then play. I try to fit all of those things in, with the exception of the strength training every day, and then the strength training in most days. But the thing about it is, I guess you could call it a system, but at some point it becomes like showering and brushing your teeth, and like, man,
Yeah,
this is
definitely.
it becomes more of a habit, I think. And I don't necessarily know that it needs to be this perfectly choreographed thing, and it doesn't need to be tons of volume. Just being active, getting up and moving on a consistent basis, being attentive to managing stress, sleeping well. Um, I mean, that's kind of the recipe, I think, because I think moderation tends to work in most arenas, right? Like, you don't have to be a person training for a marathon, or somebody who's strength training 6 days a week for 90 minutes to 2 hours. You don't need to be extreme in any one area. But usually the opposite's true. Where guys get in trouble is, they notice that they're sitting for 9 hours a day, and they're in a bad posture. They're they're not sleeping well, and they're relying on caffeine to kind of power them through the day. So much of the challenge is just letting that pendulum swing so far in one direction. You don't need it to be in the polar opposite direction. You just need to kind of find a routine, or a series of small habits that you can make just a regular part of your day. And then, I'm coming from a competitive sports background. It's for me, every day I've got my little planner there, and I want to check the boxes, and in my mind I call it win the day.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can win 6 days a week, I'm going to be a pretty happy guy.
Yeah. I mean, I love all the stuff you're saying. It's super cool. I mean, you wouldn't see guys like us that are athletes 5 years, 10 years ago talking about self-care. We especially wouldn't be talking about breath work and meditation. I mean, it's so cool to start to see the shift coming. But the key word I picked up that you said was, you said you got to commit to these things. Like, you got to commit to self-care. You got to commit to stress management. You got to commit to sleep. Because I see with a lot of my coaching clients is, so I'm so busy, I don't have time to take care of myself. And then, we've got you got businesses and kids, and you're traveling all the time, and it's like, yet you're finding time. Can you touch on that piece right there? I think I hear that's such a roadblock for the average person.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of gets back to the to-do list that I mentioned earlier, right? Like it's never going away. So if you let it control you, I mean, you're fighting a losing battle. So I guess the thing that I look at is, there are plenty of people who do far more than I do and accomplish just these grand things. They're playing with the same 24 hours I am. And so I think that you put it on your schedule and you just do it, and then you fit the work in to the time you leave available to it. And you don't, um, I, I work probably I would say 40% less than I worked 10 years ago, and I make probably 3 times as much.
Yeah, sure.
So there's not a linear correlation between um, doing more and doing better. And
Yeah,
so
sure.
I think our goal should be, how do we make our time more valuable, not how do we just spend more time at work, because that's, I mean, there's diminishing returns that are going to come with that. I mean, you're almost guaranteed. So, uh, and then even if you do succeed, what I've recognized in that realm is all these things that I remember wanting to accomplish. Hey, I was so hell bent on having a franchise in the Entrepreneur Franchise 500. I thought, man, I'll have made it then. And I got 2 franchises in there,
Yeah.
both #1 in their respective category. And it was fulfilling for about 30 seconds, 60 seconds maybe. And then it was like, now it's back to work. And like, maybe I should enjoy the process a little bit more, because if I'm just trying to hit these benchmarks that make me feel like I'll make it win, that it's pretty hollow. So I would say, look, I mean, anything that's important to you, and obviously being around to enjoy the fruits of your labor, and being around to enjoy the experiences with the people that are important to you, and have maybe a more well-rounded life, that should be important. So allocate some time to it, put it on your calendar, and make it every bit as important to you as you would make time with a client. And if you
Yeah.
can't schedule time for you or time for your family, then you're kind of saying, look, time with this person who's paying me extra number of dollars an hour, or time for this meeting with my staff or whatever else is more important. Whether or not we want to acknowledge that, I mean, that's the facts. So if it's important, schedule it, and don't overcomplicate it. Just get started. Like for me, commitment, it isn't like me saying, hey, I'm going to do something for the next 36 days. It's, I'm going to do something tomorrow, and then tomorrow I'm going to succeed. So I'll be a little bit more confident doing it the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And, you kind of have that snowball effect.
Yeah. I mean, perfect stuff. Is sage advice. It's awesome. Any last tips? Any high level takeaways? I mean, all this stuff is great. I mean, it definitely. I mean, just saying, like, schedule your appointments like you would schedule a client or a meeting for your appointments for taking care of yourself. I mean, that's a massive shift if you start to think that way.
Really, the last thing that I would tell anybody is that I don't necessarily know that balance is an appropriate word, but having this rhythm of what you're doing for you personally, what you're doing with your family or the people who are important to you, and what you're doing professionally. There's always going to be a time where something's getting a little bit more attention than normal, and then there are going to be times when they kind of settle in and find their spot. But to think that you can only be good at one is pretty short-sighted. I I am a firm believer, and I've got plenty of proof now, both in my own experiences and then with a lot of people that I've had the opportunity to work with, that professionally you actually succeed more if you're doing the other stuff, if you're taking care of you, if you're making time for those other people, because you're going to be in a better place
Yeah,
when
sure.
you get to work. And you being able to kind of show up at as close to 100% as you possibly can when you get to work is going to be pretty tough for the competition to deal with.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. I've learned a lot. I know that. I'm going to take away some of the stuff for sure. How can anyone get in touch with you, and then maybe some kind of things you've got going on that can help? What's your info? How people can reach out?
So there are a few ways. The two things that I'll tell you now, one is patrigsby.com is just kind of my general website where somebody can connect with me individually. They can see a lot of the things. I mean, I've written a daily email newsletter for about 13 years now, and so they can kind of catch up on a lot of the stuff that maybe I share, that hopefully can have some impact on them personally, professionally, just help them kind of get where they're trying to go. And then I recently released a book called The Ideal Business Formula, which is kind of my philosophy of this whole blending personal and professional success in a nutshell and my own experiences. You can get a free copy of the digital version of it at idealbusinessformulabook.com. And I think it just kind of reinforces a lot of the stuff we talked about today.
Awesome. Awesome. Just fantastic stuff. Really, really appreciate it. It's great. I mean, I've got a lot of takeaways, honestly, as a business owner and someone trying to take care of himself too. So I think everyone watching this is going to have some really great stuff too.
Well, I
Awesome.
appreciate it. So it's something that I'm certainly passionate about, because a guy in your shoes, a guy in my shoes, anybody taking the time to watch this, I think I think that obviously we're motivated to pursue our own dreams and our own goals and everything else. And so I would hate for somebody to think that they've got to concede all these other things in that pursuit, because they don't.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't. You can have it all. You just got to figure out how to make it work for you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Perfect. Thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.